Mino Line Media presents the Business First Podcast.
Hi, all, and welcome to a new episode of Business First with Sonia Aline. I am your host, and today in studio, we welcome the fabulous Barbara Clark Ruiz, who is an activewear designer with big brand and international credits. And we're going to talk about her journey, but we're also going to talk about her pivot, which we love. We love an entrepreneurial pivot. And her latest venture is the launch of a lifestyle brand for dogs called Lick You Silly Products. So I can't wait to get into that. How are you, Barbara?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This is going to be fun.
Excited to have you here. Yeah, you have a wonderful history in fashion. And if anyone were to run through your social media pages, you obviously have great taste and wonderful flair. What was it about activewear that's where you decided to settle in and make your mark?
You know, and that's a very good question because it was money. So when I was I graduated from Pratt and we had a senior show. I won a few awards and I got two job offers. One was with Ralph Lauren and one was with Adidas, because that's the proper pronunciation. It's someone's name, Adi Dassler. It's okay because all Americans are like Adidas. I'm like, really, it's Adidas. So in any event, so Adidas was offering me a position as a designer and, paying me good money after graduation, whereas Ralph Lauren was paying me half of what Adidas was offering, and I was going to have to be a design assistant. So my whole ammo was like, I am not moving back home to Virginia. That was the plan. And I'm like, I don't know what that's going to take, but I'm not going to do it. So that was how I got into activewear. And then I eventually completely and utterly fell in love with activewear.
All right. What was it about activewear that made you fall in love?
I think it was probably there was a lot of room for creativity. So now you're talking about the 80s, right? So, this is sort of like the Donna Karan era, where, clothes were very refined, right? And so activewear was that place where you could do color blocking, you could do cool print and patterns, you could do color mixing, it was just the freedom of having gone through 4 years of fashion school where it taught you the refinement of what design is. And now I have this opportunity in activewear that kind of canceled out a whole lot of what I had been taught, but really just allowed me to sort of find this new area of how do I combine the two of them. And of course, they're absolutely free flowing now in fashion between active, athleisure. Yeah, so now it's just, everybody wears it.
Yeah. You said something interesting that I think a lot of us who went to school for something learn. It's one of the things we learn as we're going through our journey. You said that it canceled out all of the things that you learned. So what was part of that discovery? And I think we've all experienced that, where we felt like based on what we were taught, this is exactly how the industry is operating. And then when you're doing it in real time, you realize that there are many other factors in play.
Well, I didn't know what to expect, right? So we get a very, a bird's eye view of what that industry is while we're studying. We don't really know what the industry is like. I had heard, you have the rumors of, people in fashion, they're not really nice. They're not kind. They're a little bit uppity. And I'm like, I don't really want that, because the work environment for me, it had to be fun. Like I'd been able to go to fashion school and I've enjoyed, being there and learning what that journey was. And, I wanted to be able to find a company that would be able to allow me to have some form of, creative expression. Not necessarily have to be someone's assistant where, like I had already done, the internships where you have to run and get coffee and you have to do these. I'm like, I didn't want to do that. Like, I just wanted to get down to the business of being creative and helping a company scale. And so I designed a lot of products that created a lot of volume, for the company, which is why a year and a half later, they invited me to join their international design team in Fontainebleau, France. Now, I wasn't ready to, I mean, I felt French with a 69, and I definitely gave my French teacher the middle finger. So, and I'm like, yeah, I'm never going to study French, right? So God laughed at me. He was like, you're going to need it. And so, I had just gotten married, and my husband's like, Barb, why don't we should, I mean, they were offering me so much money. It was like, it was a great opportunity. It was 4 other Americans that were going to be moving there with us. And so my husband's like, well, let's go. And I'm like, well, okay. So we moved to France for about 2 years. My husband's a civil engineer. He found work with Euro Disney. So we moved there, and Adidas had the horse. We were an hour outside of Paris in Fontainebleau. So Fontainebleau is a very it's equivalent to the Hamptons, with New York, the Hamptons, it's where the elite live, right? So our office was the horse stable of a chateau where they filmed movies. So we had our private chef that cooked for us every day. It was only about 45 people that worked at the company. Everybody's like, under the age of like 45, so we had our private chef, we had a swimming pool, we had a tennis court, and oftentimes like during lunch, designers and our office. So it had these big horse stable doors that would open up, and it was like this chateau. And it was stunning because they filmed movies there, and we would grab blankets and we would go and sit on the lawn, and the chef would bring our food out for us with lunch. And, we would have, design meetings around the pool. Like, I'm like, this is what I had to come from, and then figure out, okay, so what's my next going to be? So after they closed the office, they moved it back to the headquarters in Herzogenaurach, Germany. And so my husband was like, yep, ready to go back home to the States. And I said, okay, great. You go back. I'm going to finish my collection. So, my boss said to me, well, just come to Germany for like 3 months. And then, you can decide what you want to do. And he's like, well, by the way, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I'm just going to go and find another company to work for. And he said, why don't you stand as a consultant? I'm like, well, what do they do? And he's like, well, you just come to Germany, once a month. You continue to design your own collections. And I'm like, well, that's amazing. So I did that for 5 years. I traveled back and forth to Germany for 5 years. I was with Adidas for 8 in total. And, while I was there, because I was designing so much product that was doing volume, they gave me my own category of business. So I was able to create a collection, which is called Trefoil. And at the time, it was the early version of Ivy Park. So I did like 3 stripe, overalls and jackets, and it was very cool. And we added footwear, so it became the concept for the Adidas Original stores.
Wow, what an incredible story, and what an incredible start to your career, right? Which also makes it easy to understand that you had developed enough expertise, it sounds like, over this time to eventually start your business. When was it that was the consulting gig with Adidas the beginning of you working as an entrepreneur?
Yes, it was the beginning. So a lot of and honestly, it was like I couldn't have planned it the way it went. I could not have planned it. It like I'm so many things, like I'm just so incredibly blessed that my journey has been what it is. But I think it really has to do with the fact that I'm an extremely dedicated, hard worker. I'm a hustler through and through, right? So when I start a project, it gets done. And I make sure that whomever I'm doing that project for, they are being shown in their best light. It is my pride, right? And so a lot of the people that I work with, a lot of my colleagues that were in France, they didn't move to Germany. They went to work for other companies because their families were in France. So after I finished working with Adidas, I had gotten pregnant. I'm like, I'm tired of the international travel. Well, I get a phone call from my old product manager that says, hey, Barb, I'm headed up apparel at Fila in Biella, Italy, and I want you to come and work with me. And I'm like, I'm not moving to Italy. He was like, no, 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 you don't have to move. Just come over once a month. So I did that for like 2.5 years. I traveled to Biella, Italy for like 2.5 years. And then from there, I'm like, okay, now I'm really done. And so I still continue to work for European companies, but it was like, we sent sketches via internet. If I needed to go to their office, I would. But, I've been able to work with, Nike, New Balance, Asics, Zogs, Disney, Speedo, the NBA, Jockey, Hanes. Was design director for Walmart's 6 activewear divisions. We did about $750 million in our 6 divisions. I also did a little project with Serena Williams, and we did a dress line together, but we just couldn't find a home for it, a retail home for it. But I was able to get connected to Venus through that opportunity. And so when I get this call from a mutual friend of Serena, says, hey, Venus is looking for someone to help her with her line 11. And he's like, would you be interested? And I was like, heck yeah, I'd be interested. So he's like, okay, I'm going to give her your number. She's going to call you. You know how things happen. And you're like, she's never going to call. So I'm telling you, like out of the blue, I get a call one day. And I'm like, hi, Barbara. She's like, hey, this is Venus. Williams? She was like, yeah. I'm like, can you just give me 1 minute? Give me a minute. And so we ended up having a great conversation. She ended up hiring me. I worked with her for 4.5 years. I went back and forth to Florida. I helped her to, really re-ideate her brand. And I worked with her in all facets of the business. And she went off to play tennis. She's like, Barb, can you just kind of hold it down while I do this thing? And I'm like, yep, I got you. So yeah, I went to work with Venus. But it was while I was working with Venus that, I had started to cook for my dogs. And it was just, I was frustrated because whenever my dogs would eat store-bought food, they would throw up, and nobody wants to clean that up. So I said, I'm just going to cook for my dogs. And then I said, you know what, one day I'm going to start a dog treat brand. And honest to God, I didn't really believe myself. It was just one of those things. So when I was working with Venus, I said, hey, I'm seriously thinking about starting a dog treat brand. And so she and Serena had like 5 dogs. She's like, Barb, you should do it. You should do it. And I was like, girl, I don't know anything about dog treats except opening up a bag. She was like, well, just surround yourself with really smart people like me. And I said, well, you can afford smart people like me. I'm going to go to YouTube University. And so that's what I did. I educated myself on YouTube, and I just use all of my skill set that I use when I'm creating products for my clients. How is that product going to stand out in the market? What is the story behind it? What is the visuals behind it? So I went through all of that to come up with my dog treat brand. So this is Lick You Silly. And,
I love the name.
Thank you. And, I'm one of these people that when I go into a wine store, I buy the wine based on a pretty bottle, a pretty label. Like, I don't really drink. So that's what I work with, right? I feel like if you're going to take the time to design a beautiful label, then the product has to be amazing. And so I wanted to design a really beautiful bag, and I wanted it to be contemporary, and I wanted it to be fun. But more importantly, I wanted Lick You Silly to be a brand based on love and kindness, because I just don't think there's enough of that in the world. And if I could use my dog treats as a way to do that, then I need, again, this journey to be fun. So when I created the brand, it was called Yum Yum Puppy, but we didn't get the trademark because it was a company called Yum Yum Yum. And my older dog, she used to sit and lick herself all the time. It used to drive me crazy. Like, I could be on the 3rd floor of my house and I could hear her licking. And so one night when I was asleep, she woke me up out of a dead sleep. And I said, one day you're going to lick yourself silly. And I'm like, wait, what? Lick you silly? Huh. So
sounds like the
so
name.
that was how that was, and I kept throwing it out there to my friends. I was like, "Lick You Silly." They were like, "Well, Barb, it makes me chuckle." And when I knew that it would make people laugh, I'm like, "That is what I want." So when I created the brand, it is going to be a animated short series, and it's going to be a reality show. I'm actually in the process of pitching a company now for the reality show. And, and I have an initiative called Lick Silly with Kindness, and this little card that you get in your bag. And if you get it, you email us the number that's on the card, and you do a random act of kindness, and you videotape it. You tag us on social media, and your dog wins a free bag of dog treats. So that's our way of getting humans to do a little good in this world.
Oh, I love it. You say in your press information that you spent a year doing the research before you launched this product. What was it that you discovered about the industry, this new industry that you were about to go into,
Hmm.
that helped you feel more confident about launching the product?
Well, I didn't feel confident. I just felt
Mm.
like God put it in my spirit so strongly that I had to do it. I didn't know where it was going to end up. I just felt like it was a faith walk, and I knew that there had to be other people who were having the same challenges because, I mean, I started this brand 4.5 years ago, and there wasn't a lot of focus on human grade products. Dog treats and dog food was whatever was left over. And I knew that if people could understand that if you feed your dog good, wholesome, quality food and dog treats, that's going to allow your dog to live a little longer. And of course, you're not going to have to worry about vet bills, right? So, I felt like if I could put it out there and I can get the right product. Now, the product, so to your point, the thing that was really a wake up for me is that I didn't know that it was less than 3% of minorities in the pet space.
Right.
Not a clue. And it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's a very, very small percentage of minorities. And so I think that was the first thing. And I was like, do I really want to do this? And then being able to find suppliers. So I felt like, I'm not gonna, you know, when I decided I wanted freeze dried beef liver because that was at the top of the food chain, it was a single ingredient. And I said, let me just start with single ingredients, right? Because people understand that and they understand a piece of meat. But it was really hard for me to find suppliers, and they didn't want to sell to
Mm.
me because they're saying you got about like 30,000 pounds of dog. It was like these crazy amounts of dog treats. I'm like, what? I can't do anything with that. So I found a supplier that I love, and I just please sell to me, please sell to me, you must sell to me. I take a chance on me, and they just said sign an NDA and we'll sell to you. And so those people have been my supplier ever since.
Wow. And so, what are you learning about the process in this new space that you didn't feel confident in, that you are now succeeding in?
Well, what I realized is that if you can find a great supply partner, that dogs love the products, that is three-quarters of the battle, right? The other part of that is your packaging. What is that packaging going to look like? If you want to be in a retail store, how does it align with other companies that are there on the market? How is your product going to stand out? Right? And then when you talk about, like your online marketing, what is how are you going to position this, and what is that story that you're going to tell that's going to resonate with people? So, it's a number of different things that you have to take into consideration. And then I honestly just kept telling myself that, there was a lot of companies that were making coffee before Starbucks came along. I just need to figure out how to do it better. And that's what we've done. I mean, our business really kicked up in high heels during COVID because I was in conversations with HSN, and I had designed a tote bag that was going to come with 2 bags of dog treats, and I had purchased like 3,000 pounds of dog treats in preparation for that. And the buyer got COVID, and people got COVID in the very beginning. It was, it was hard.
Right.
It was tough. So I think she ended up leaving the company, but the buyer who came in afterwards, she wasn't interested in the pet space at all. So I'm left with these dog treats,
Mm.
and I felt like that was really the first time that I said, I don't even know if I need to. I don't know if this is the business for me. But when
Wow.
we became an essential product on Amazon. Amazon allowed 6 categories of business to ship. Dog treats and dog food was one of them. And for whatever reason,
Mm.
people loved the visual because, they hadn't tried it. They loved the packaging. We had some accolades because we were the pet amenity for 8 Kimpton hotels. And, we had won, our Nutter Doodles had won Best Dog Treat in Cosmo Magazine. So we had like some accolades behind us. And people just bought the product. So, the quantity of product that I had, I probably went through it in like 3 weeks. And then we've
Wow.
been hustling to try to keep it in stock ever since, which is why I'm about to do a crowdfunding campaign next week, because we have so many opportunities on the table and we just need the capital to be able to do that. And I want to get a little bit more under our belt before I start those investor discussions, so we can have a really good valuation. And so I'm going to do a crowdfunding campaign so I can move the needle a little bit more before I start those discussions.
Wow. Your timing again was impeccable, because I remember reports that were written during COVID about the importance of animals during that time. People had really bonded with their pets because they were home, or because they were
Yeah.
having challenges with, with relatives or people that they were living with. The relationship with pets became really, really important. So it makes sense that I didn't realize that Amazon had only allowed these particular categories, which happen to benefit you. That's
hmm
incredible. The other thing is, it sounds as if your creative process for developing is way beyond just the product. Talk to us a little
hmm
bit about your creative thinking. I mean, you automatically start thinking about design because that's who you are, but you talked about story development, and even you're saying that you're going to be working on some TV opportunities. And so when you come up with an idea, whether it's in design, right, or whether it's now with this lifestyle product for dogs, what are you thinking about when a product comes to mind or an idea comes to mind for you?
Well, I write a lot of things down. I flush out my
Mm,
ideas and thoughts on paper first. And that's when I get an initial idea. And honestly, I feel like I'm a spiritual person, and I spend a lot of time just, praying and asking for guidance and order my steps and surround me with people who should be a part of my destiny. And I feel like when something pops in my head, I feel like that's a divine message, right? So, for instance, right after COVID, I woke up one morning and I was moved to create a commercial in my town, right? There was just so much uncertainty, and I'm like, I want to, make people laugh. I want to take the edge off a little bit. So we have a town Facebook page, and I went on the Facebook page and I said, hey, I'd like for you guys to help me to create a commercial, and I'll drop off the dog treats. I'll send you a video on what I need you to film. And then, of course, I was going to edit it all together. And I expected to probably get like 5 people, and I ended up getting like 35 people. And I'm dropping off all
mm,
the dog treats, and, everybody filmed their part, and I put it together and I edited. And it was just really fun. And so many people wrote me to say, it was such an uncertain time, and it was just really good to have
mm.
something that was a distraction. And
Right.
I felt like I wasn't looking for a distraction, but I just felt like it was just so heavily on my heart that I'm like, well, what can I do? So
Right.
usually in my process with coming up with ideas, like I'll noodle them around in my head a little bit, and then talk to my husband, my daughter, who's also she's an artist and has her own business, and um, and then I'll just decide, okay, well, what makes the most sense, and I start just
Right.
just thinking through, like, what are the pros and cons, what are the costs, and all that needs to go into it. What is the time that needs to go into it? And then from there, I'll figure out, okay, how is this going to help my brand build brand awareness, give us, again, have another entity that's going to be a brand differentiator. So I always try to think about what's going to make us stand out, what's going to make us memorable. So, you know, um, we had an event a few years ago where one of my retailers, she is a puppy boutique, and everybody loves puppies, right? So I said, let's do a event where we let people come in and just love up on puppies. So it was called Puppy Pop Licktopia, and we ended up having it at a friend's boutique, and we only passed out like a few flyers, and then we didn't ask people to sign up. And so when the event started, we had like over 100 people that showed up to like love up on puppies. And it was just, I mean, people turned to mush. Like like it doesn't matter who that person is when they're around a
Yeah.
puppy. like it's all guards just come down. So that was a really cool and fun event. And then for Black Friday, a couple 2 years ago, we did a dance party with your dog. So and we did it. We did it Black Friday, and I think we did it like not Christmas Eve. It might have been like the day after Christmas, but we had
Mhm.
people who came. They wore like their pajamas. They had matching pajamas with their dogs. We had a DJ, and it was a trivia party too. So I had people answering trivia questions, and so they won my
Mhm.
dog treats. So that was really fun. Like I really love doing fun events, with people and their dogs. And we have an event coming up on October the 10th with a local shelter, and I have a award-winning chef that's going to come and cook for the dogs. So
Wow.
I'm really excited about that event. So I like to come up with really creative things, that are memorable that I think that people aren't expecting.
So do you think that this is going to be the direction for you right now? It's really focused on developing all the different aspects of lifestyle products for dogs, or will it just depend on what crosses your heart or what you become inspired by?
Well, as a consultant, I'm always looking for new clients, right? I love
Okay.
design, and I'm looking for new clients now, by the way.
Okay.
And and I've talked to so many companies, and people always say, "Well, Barb, why did you choose the path of a consultant?" And I said, "Well, because I just couldn't find a company that wanted to hire me." So I just did consulting, so
Right.
I would love to go and work for a company in a capacity that would allow me to use my skill set as a designer and an entrepreneur. Because
Right.
I think outside the box. I mean, I'm just really creative when it talks about like how do we build businesses. Like I love doing that. I love working with small businesses to help them to ideate, new product ideas. And, people say to me all the time, Barb, I've got an idea, but I don't know where to start. And I'm like, I can help you figure out where to start. I can help you bring that product to market. Right. So I'm looking for my next opportunity to be able to do that. But in the meantime, like while you look, I still believe in moving forward. So, I'm
Right.
focused on my dog treat brand. And as I mentioned, I'm doing a crowdfunding campaign because we have a lot of opportunities on the table. But then I recently started a partnership with one of my old colleagues from Adidas called Sport Culture Advisors. And it's like so new, but we have a client that we're working with in a sales capacity, and he's the company is a manufacturer, and I'm finding a lot of manufacturers don't want to be not just they just don't want to be only manufacturers now because they
Mhm.
realize that there are business opportunities that they're leaving money on the table. Like they could literally
Right.
have their own brand and cut out the middleman because they are the middleman and go straight to retailers. So we're looking
Right.
to work with more manufacturers to help them to bring product to market.
Wow. And you're currently in another partnership with Cole. Are you developing that and working?
So that partnership, I was a guest designer for them. They
Okay.
were looking to reach more of the minority consumer, and they brought me in to design collections for men's, women's, girls, and boys. And so I did that, and I took the collection, increased sales 22% in the first 6 weeks, which was so unexpected. I knew it was going to do well, but I didn't know it was going to do that well. And then they had me to design three other collections after that. And they wanted to keep me on, but they did a series of layoffs. And so as a consultant, I kind of go with the wash. So
Right. Right.
but I enjoy working with the company, quite a bit, and I'd love to be able to work with more companies in that capacity.
Yeah. What do you think are your superpowers? Because in all of these partnerships or these consulting deals, you seem to grow revenues for the companies that you work with. And so what is it that you feel that you bring in that these companies are either missing or that they just purely benefit from having you on board?
I bring excellence. I bring as
Mm.
close as you can get to excellence, because I feel like when you're forward facing to the consumer, I've been the consumer. We've all been consumers. We know what our
Yeah.
expectations are for products. And so I really look at how we present that product to the consumer, um, from a lens of what is that expectation? How can we completely blow their mind in terms of what the
Mhm.
expectation is? And so
Right.
I feel like, I feel like I'm a visionary. I feel like I can see what brands need to do and how they need to improve. And I see it so clearly. Not
Right.
always, but oftentimes I can see
Mhm.
it so clearly. Sometimes it's a big scope for a company, or sometimes it is just, here's a companies will give me like incubator, right? They'll let me, like, for the
Mhm.
truffle collection that I did for Adidas, it was really an incubator for to see how that was going to be, uh, if it was going to be liked by the consumer, how that was going to be received by the consumer. And then when we realized, oh wow, consumers like it, well, what happens if we add footwear, right? And if
Right.
they like that and we add footwear, what happens if we add accessories? All right, well, maybe this could be a separate business entity. And so oftentimes that's kind of how, like, things happen. And so as a consultant, when companies bring me in, they're looking for a fresh perspective. They're looking for, sometimes when designers have been in, that same capacity for years, you know, even though they've had their successes, sometimes it requires a fresh perspective to kind of see what is it that we could be doing better, what could we be doing, differently, you
Right.
know, uh, how do we shake it up a little bit? So that's where I come in.
Yeah. For some of the bigger brands, and we've all watched this happen, who have spent a ton of money launching new product only to watch it fail or not do well, as someone watching what goes on in the industry, what is usually, and I know that there may be certain things that are particular to certain companies, is there a common denominator for what makes these products that have all of the money, that have particularly do all the branding and all the marketing, that make them just not resonate with the public at all?
It's people. They have the right talent. And companies don't know they don't have the right talent. And I've spoken to a couple of companies that I've talked to their senior level executives, and I've been in the rooms with the designers, and I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't know if that person is the right fit for this. So oftentimes I feel like it's not the right people who can create what that overarching brand vision should be, and then be able to roll it out in execution and be able to pivot. If something's not working, how about we pivot to something that
Right.
could work, right? And then, but sometimes things, I mean, it's just not going to work. It wasn't a good idea to begin with. Even before you get to the vision, it just wasn't a good idea to begin with. So,
Right.
but people are more likely to take chances when it's not their money, right? They're going to be
Right.
a lot more careful if it was their own money that they're spending, because they want to make sure they get a return on their dollar.
For those who are, you have a great balance of being creative and also understanding business, and which is
Mhm.
a, which, I don't know if it's true, but we often hear that it's a rare combination. And so what would you say to those who are listening, who are very creative, have a really great command of their creative talents, but haven't been able to really use them to move their businesses forward?
I would say to them to get a mentor, to join, Facebook groups that they can, bounce ideas off. There's a lot of business Facebook groups out there on the web. But really just find yourself like a circle of people, even if you have to create it yourself, you know, um, but get yourself some mentors, and then and of course, read. There are a lot
Right.
of audio books out here. While you're sitting there being creative, you can listen to an audio book. But I find that really having yourself a really strong circle of advisors that you can call upon when you get stuck, or if you want to talk something through. I think that's really important, because as an entrepreneur and a solopreneur, we're like an island, right? We feel like
Mhm.
we're this one person on our island and nobody else is experiencing
Right.
these same things that we're going through. And that's not true. You just got to find your tribe that can help you to muddle through, some of those challenging times. And then, get those cheerleaders. Like if you're going to have a tribe, you got to have a cheerleader. You got to have that person that's going to be like, you got this, girl, keep pushing. You're so close. And then you got to have that advisor that can be brutally honest to say, no, you know what I mean? Like you just got to make sure you have all of these people that that are, in your ear. And then ultimately you just have to make the decision that you feel is right. And I feel like, oftentimes as we, as adults, we forget how to listen to our gut, and I always say to people, find time to meditate, find time to just close, turn off the phone, just find some quiet space and just allow your mind to just relax and just, cool it out and just think, put your feet in some grass, do some grounding with the earth and, and just get back to center. I love to go to the beach and I love to just sit on the beach and, I can sit on the beach for like 7 hours and literally do nothing except read a book, do some sketches, okay, I'll send a text message or answer some emails, but I just love just being there because, when my phone dies, it's like, all right, well, I guess I better read this book or, let me just sit here and just think. I like to go to the beach and just make notes and just, reassess where I am in my life and where it is that I want to go.
Right. I also love the fact that you said, that whatever God puts in your heart or whatever you feel motivated to do, you listen to. And I mean, I've interviewed a lot of people over the years, and some of the most successful people are the ones who listen to what their heart and what their God is actually saying and how to guide them. So I'm always inspired by folks who feel that way as well, because it's consistent.
Yeah.
That's a consistent theme.
Yeah, but sometimes, when there's so much noise, like you don't hear it, right? When there's just so much mental noise and there's just so much like indecisiveness and turmoil in your head, and there's just your brain is just moving, and it just never gets a minute to pause. It's hard to hear, right? So you have to consciously just say, I'm just going to give myself a couple of hours and I'm going to go for a walk and it's just going to be me and my thoughts. You have to find that time.
Yeah. So what's next for you, Barbara? I mean, you're going to set up this crowdfunding. You want to have some more investment conversations. But what's next in terms of you being creative and developing business and finding new consulting opportunities?
I mean, I think that, I'm always looking for the new opportunities, but, I'm spoiled because I've actually had a career that I've enjoyed. Like a lot of people go to work every day and they're like, oh my God, I hate my job. I hear that more often than people saying I love my job. And I have to say that I love my job and I'm spoiled in the sense that, it's just always been that way. And it's so hard for me to think about doing something that it is just not in my heart to do it, So even if I've been on a quest now for, I don't know, like a year or two, looking for I think about a year and a half looking for a new client. But at the same time, I'm still moving forward, right? I'm still, because, it's so crazy because even with all the experience that I have, companies will say to me, Barb, you're so overqualified. We don't even know what to do with you. Like, we don't even know. I'm like, really? You think you can't hire me and we can work that out? We can figure that out along the way? It's so funny. Like I get that a lot. So, I'm like, well, is that the universe kind of saying to me, well, Bart, maybe you need to figure out in the meantime, like maybe like take a full pivot, right? Maybe there's something else that you need to do. And so I'm just trying to figure out, like I said, I'm doing sales now with Sport Culture Advisors. We love to be able to, acquire, more clients, and get them in retail doors. So I find that to be fun and exciting, but I'm really considering opening. I have a TikTok shop, but I'm really considering opening up a TikTok shop because, I actually auditioned to be an on-air hostess for QVC, and I actually had two
Oh.
interviews. Because I could sell some stuff. so so I said, you know what? Maybe I'll do, open myself a TikTok shop and I'll sell some products. And, I love, talking to people and, especially if it's something that I really believe in,
Right.
you know, uh, being able to select products and TikToks that I think my followers would like. That sounds like
Mm.
that would be fun to me. And just, having to pretty up and go on air and sell these clothes. I'm like, I think that's a winner. So, so we'll see. We'll see. And then I'll sell clothes 1 hour and dog treats in the next hour.
Right.
So we'll see.
I do want to go back to what you say is it is a rare occurrence that people say that they love their jobs. Like when I think about all the people I know, very few of them are saying, I enjoy going to work on Monday morning, or I enjoy the work that I'm doing. What is it that you think? And you could say that you were lucky and blessed, right? But do you think you attribute it to something else? That maybe it's the choices that you made, or maybe was it being really deliberate about what the work was offering you? Because sometimes I feel like people just stay in places whether they're happy or not because they're working.
Yeah, yeah. I think, well, I was a consultant, so I came in,
Mm-hmm.
working with these companies knowing that, it might have taken 2, 3, or 4 years, but, the contracts come
Right.
to an end just like an employee. Like, even if they had hired me as an employee, I could work there for 2 years and they could let me go, or I could work there for four
Right.
years. So the only difference for me and my level of commitment is that I didn't get, benefits, right? So,
Right.
but it was always the same for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, I have friends, I have colleagues that, they say, I'm going to work for this company for 2.5 years and I'm moving on because they want to move up the corporate ladder, right? I
Right.
totally get that. Um, but, for me, it's like when one opportunity would finish, there was always another one coming up the roadway. And, and I just tried to make sure that while I'm between, clients, that I am, working on some things, working on myself, reading more books and, things of that nature that can help me to just be a better designer, or really just a better person, just trying to work on
Awesome.
myself. I'm married. I've been married. I'll be married for 36 years in November. So, I mean, I feel very blessed because, like I said before, I don't think I could have planned it.
Right.
I talk to people all the time, and they're like, "How did you get to work for all those companies?" And it's like relationships, and that, I mean, really, that's the other thing is that you don't want to burn bridges. I mean, sometimes you got to,
Mhm.
but you don't want to burn bridges because relationships matter. Like, you can call on those people,
Right.
to give you opportunities. And oftentimes, like,
Right.
I didn't have to go to HR. I just went directly to, the VP of design, or, the design director, or whomever that
Mhm.
brought me in. And I remember when I got this opportunity with Kohl's, the gentleman that hired me was the same gentleman that hired me at Walmart. And I had worked at Walmart 10 years prior, and he just happened to be on LinkedIn. And I think it must have been a work anniversary. And I just said,
Right.
"Oh, hey, happy anniversary." And so he replied, he was like, "Hey, what are you up to?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm actually looking for some new projects. What you got?" And so he said, "Yeah, let's talk on Monday." And so we spoke, and he told me what he was interested in doing, and so that was kind of how it started, just like that.
Well, we wish you continued success and would love to hear how this journey progresses and all the good things that we know will continue to happen for you. For those of us who want to follow you, support you when you get the crowdfunding up, how should we follow you and
You
stay
can follow
connected?
me. I am on TikTok under Barbara Clark Ruiz. I'm also under Lick You Silly Pets, I think, on
Okay.
TikTok. On Instagram with I'm Barbara Clark Ruiz, and for Lick You Silly, I'm Lick You Silly Yum Yum. And then on LinkedIn, anybody, you can connect with me on LinkedIn and I can share, my social channels. I'll be posting my crowdfunding campaign on
Okay.
LinkedIn when it's all said and done. So that's probably the best way, I'm thinking. And then if
Okay.
somebody's like, hey, I want to follow you on social. Okay, great. Here it is.
Okay. All right. Well, we will be watching and following and supporting. I didn't mention the name of the company. You are CEO of BC Swirl
Correct.
and
BC
the
Swirl Incorporated
BC Swirl
and Ayala
Incorporated.
Product Group. So Ayala Product Group is the umbrella company for Lick You Silly because I have other
Okay.
projects that I'm going to be doing. I have a project that I'm going to be launching. I didn't mention it because it ain't ready yet. But
Okay.
I also wrote a children's book that I'm going to be launching,
Oh,
and I plan to turn that into an animated short series.
okay.
Like I just need a whole bunch of more arms.
I know. Well, and that's why you're going to be back because we know there's going to be a lot more to share and a lot more to talk about. Yeah, congratulations on a very inspiring career. 36 years of marriage to obviously a very supportive partner because this is the same man who flew with you to France at
The
the start
same
of your
one.
career.
It's the same one.
So,
Yes. He is
absolutely.
the
So
love of my life.
congratulations. That's so wonderful. So that's the other part of having a successful career, right? Is having a supportive partner. And so,
Yeah. I
yeah,
couldn't ask for a better
congratulations
one.
on that as well.
Thank
That's
you.
that's incredible. And yeah, and like I said, we look forward to hearing much more and supporting you on your journey.
I'm excited. Thank you. I appreciate so much having you. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Same here. And thank you all for listening. Next week we'll be back again with another great guest. Take care.
The Business First podcast is hosted and produced by Sonia Aline. Executive producer Ken Johnson. Find the Business First podcast on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, Odyssey, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, TuneIn, or wherever you get your podcast. On social media on IG at business_first_podcast. Follow the Mean Old Line Media Podcast Network on IG at Mean Old Line Media. Get the Mean Old Line Media app in the App Store or Google Play. The Business First Podcast is a Mean Old Line Media production.